Hi everyone, welcome to another week of videos from me, children's librarian Alicia, here at home recommending children's books that you can read while the library is closed from our online sources. And I recommend activities to do at home, and I tell bad jokes to keep you entertained while the library is closed and you can't come in and listen to me tell bad jokes in person. So today we're actually going to recommend and talk about books of poetry for kids because, as you might know, April is Poetry Month. So we're going to celebrate poetry a little bit, and we're going to do that in my joke as well. I have a good poetry joke for you. It goes like this. What did the poet say to Luke Skywalker? Metaphors be with you. Did you get it? Did you get it? Okay, so the first book I'm going to recommend today is one for the younger kids, so very, very young kids who are just starting to sort of learn about rhyming and playing with words, and really anyone. They're quite fun to read no matter who you are, but mostly for the younger set, and it is called Ook the Book and Other Silly Rhymes. And this is one that you can read on Tumble Books, and it's just a series of very short, very simple poems, and a lot of them are really quite funny and kind of tongue-in-cheek. For example, there's one about Ake the snake who likes to bake and is very good at baking, and Ake the snake threatens that he will throw anyone who steals his snake cake right into the lake. So for that kind of funny sort of introduction to rhyming, it's really quite hysterical. If you would like something a little bit more classic, so classic Canadian children's poetry, we have copies of Alligator Pie by Dennis Lee available on both Library to Go and on Freeding. And remember, those books on Freeding, you never have a waiting list on those, so you can download that one anytime and give it a read if you haven't already. It's a classic, award-winning Canadian piece of literature for kids, written back in 1975, and it is still popular. It still circulates very well at the library. So I encourage everyone to give this one a read if you've never read it before. Our next one is a really unique title. And it's unique not because it's an award winner, but because it's a great book to read together with somebody else. So if you are lucky enough to have somebody else in your house with you that you can read with, this is a really nice selection. It is called Joyful Noise, Poems for Two Voices by Paul Fleischman. And this one is available on Freeding as well. And it is a book of poems which has won several awards, including the Newbery Medal, which is very prestigious. And all of the poems are about insects. So if you have a bug lover in the house, this is a good one. But it is made so that every poem is best read with two people, two voices alternating, so taking turns reading one line and then another. So you can read it by yourself, but it's even better if you've got one or more people to read it with. So it's a great one to sit together with your family and read all together as a group. So our next book is one moving on a little bit to more older children, and it is called Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. And this one's available from Library to Go, and we also have it available as an audiobook, so you can just listen to it, do something else, and just listen to some wonderful poetry. And this is another award winner, but it's a little more serious than the other ones that I've recommended so far. And all of the poems in the book are about the author's own experiences as a child. She grew up in the 60s and 70s during the civil rights movement as an African-American child, And so she talks a little bit about those experiences that she had growing up in that environment. And she also talks about how she started writing stories and sort of being a storyteller, even though she struggled a lot with reading as a child. And I think a lot of kids find that relatable, that even, kids who maybe struggled a little bit with reading, finding out that you can still be a writer, you can still be a storyteller, even if you haven't been a super reader your whole life, right? And despite some of the emotional topics, the civil rights movement and being quite serious, the poems are still very accessible to kids, and I recommend it for maybe about grade 5 and up. And our last book, which I'm going to recommend, is called Pizza, Pigs, and Poetry by Jack Prelutsky. And if you like children's poems, you maybe know his name already. He's a very prolific author and poet for children. He's written over 1,000 poems and a bunch of very popular children's poetry books like A Pizza the Size of the Sun, My Dog May Be a Genius, and many more. And most of his poems are very, very funny. And so this book is very funny as well, but it's not a book of poetry, it's a book about how to write poetry for kids. So if you have a kid in the house who wants some ideas for how to write their own poems or some tips for writing their own poetry, this is a really good one. It's funny and engaging to read, and it also gives a lot of really good tips and encouragement for kids who want to write their own poems. So those are all of our books, but in the description of this video, I've also included a couple of links to 2 other things that you might really enjoy. One of them is a YouTube video where poet Nikki Grimes talks about her favorite cake and tells you how to write food poems. So she gives you a little bit of some ideas for writing your own poems about your favorite food. And I've also included a link to a kid's magnetic poetry kit online. So if you've ever seen that magnetic poetry that you can buy in little boxes to stick up on the fridge, this is like a virtual version of that. So every time you visit the site, it has different words, and you click and drag the different words to make your own poem, and you can save it and print it out and put it up on your own fridge if you want. So it's like virtual magnetic poetry. It's really fun. And that kind of brings us to our activity idea for today is write your own poems. Write some poetry, celebrate Poetry Month. There are so many different kinds of poems. You can write something short or long, pick something that you like, and write a poem about that. There's also a great activity you can do, especially if you have older kids in the house. It's one of my favorites. It's called Blackout Poetry. What Blackout Poetry is you find a page in a book or magazine article and choose some words in the article or the page to create a poem. And then you black out all of the other words on the page. So you're kind of transforming what is on the page already into your own poem. So it'll end up looking kind of something like this. You'll pick a couple of words to make your poem and then black out everything else. And you can add some little artwork. There are some very, very creative examples out there. I'll put a link to some different examples, but if you just Google Blackout Poetry, you'll find tons of examples and some really creative ones as well. So I hope that gives you some ideas. Let us know what you think. Do you have a favorite poem? Share it with us. Let's talk about poetry, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.